Thanks for welcoming me. Let's begin with a little song. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Lean back, we are at your back. Feel the waters of ancestral blessing. We are at your back. We're right here. We're right here. Rucha ad Shekhinah. Blessed are you, source of all creation. You who gives us our aliveness and brings us to greet this day. We give great thanks and praise for all that has been woven for us to be together. Giving thanks and offering reverence to the indigenous peoples of these lands that we inhabit, extending that respect to First Nations people everywhere. We give thanks to the elements, to the seasons, to the more than human world that is our kin, to all that spirals through time, moving us with it. And today, especially today, we call upon and welcome our bright and benevolent ancestors, all of those who have come before us. We are so grateful. Hello, everybody. I am Kohenet Keshira, haLev, Fife, and so glad to be back together with you all. In some ways, I was reflecting this morning, this year feels like it has gone on forever, perhaps because it's just a mere continuation of last year. And in other ways, it has moved so fast. Here we are, just a few weeks left in the Gregorian year 2021, and already we are at the end of the book of Breshit. It seems like we were just eating apples and honey not so long ago. This coming Shabbat morning, we will read from Parshat Vayechi, and he lived. In this parasha, both Jacob and Joseph gather their families in blessing. They meet their deaths and are buried. In Jacob's case, he gathers his sons and his two grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh. He wants to share prophecy with them, to tell them what lies ahead. But, Rashi teaches, the Shekhinah departs from him, and he begins to speak of other things. One understanding of this is that were Jacob to have revealed what would unfold in the years and decades to come, it might rob his sons of fully experiencing their lives. Can you imagine what it would be like if each of us could foresee the unfolding of events? At first blush, it might seem like a great idea, or maybe not so. We might live our whole lives on autopilot, always being able to anticipate what's coming next without really paying much attention. Sometimes this happens to me. I go through the motions of getting ready to leave my house. I get into the car and then think, did I lock my front door? Sometimes I say the Hamotzi by rote without actually stopping for the gratitude to enter into the equation. Perhaps worse yet, we might become defeated or disempowered if we knew our own futures. Had I known that I would never be given a lead role in the play, I might have stopped auditioning. I would have then given up friendships and memories and fun that happened along the way. Alternatively, we might live our lives in frustration, knowing all the things that would or wouldn't come to be, desperately trying to change the direction of things only to find that cosmic GPS reroutes us every time. In either case, I think it's safe to say that life would lose some of its meaning. After all, there is beauty in not knowing. Relationships are strengthened when we support one another through uncertainty. Possibility can make our mouths water. Surprise and delight produces a smile whose authenticity is hard to compete with. It is, of course, entirely possible that Jacob was stunted in his speech because the level of prophecy that he wanted to share can't actually be unfurled. For though we know that the divine is all-knowing and all-powerful, we also know from Jewish tradition that we have free will and that it's not possible for our every move to be beset by prophecy. So instead, Jacob offers each of his sons a blessing befit for them alone. Then it's only a matter of verses before it's Joseph's turn, and Rabbi Yael Levi offers a powerful translation of what transpires as he gathers his siblings and offers his blessing. She translates these verses from Genesis, Genesis 50, verse 19, saying, "Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Our actions produce results that are often different from what we had intended. Life unfolds as it will, and the mystery is always present." Joseph spoke these words with kindness right to their hearts. Joseph is reminding them that it is impossible to know what tomorrow will hold. And of course, more to the point, he says mystery is always present. We could understand this as at the surface level of saying there will always be uncertainty and that the divine is with us even in those moments. Or we could understand this as saying that the divine is synonymous with the mystery, that the ever unfolding is divinity at play. In either case, the book of Bereshit comes to a close with the progenitors of the tribes of Israel burying their father and their brother after a lifetime of struggles and joys and uncertainties and blessings. And so as we prepare to close our eyes, move more deeply into our sit, I invite us to take a moment to feel the ending of this chapter, the ending of this book, filled with matriarchs and patriarchs, with so many ancestors. It's fitting to do this at the end of a year, reflecting back on all that we have done, all that we have experienced, and to notice that so many forces beyond us and before us are what have made it all possible. Yes, our choices and our hard work and strong communities have a part in this creation, but it rests on so much more that came before. So we pause in gratitude for all of our ancestors, the ones whose names and faces we know, and the ones before them, and the ones before them, all the way back to Joseph and Jacob. All of those who have had lifetimes of struggle and joy and uncertainty and delight and blessing. All of that has eventuated to this moment. Each of us being who we are, as we are, right here and now. Generations of ancestors in order for us to be here, zooming from various places across this land, or maybe even around the globe, across time zones, and weather patterns. We take a moment to call upon those bright and benevolent ancestors, or perhaps beloved dead, those who have been laid to rest in this last year. You might choose one person to sit with you or to be with you in your sit. Or you might open more broadly and just see who crosses your mind or makes a connection in your heart. Even without a name or a face, perhaps they will bring a blessing to you in this time of quiet. So let's take a few deep breaths together to bring ease to heart and mind. And we will have about 10 minutes in silent time, and then we'll come back together. We are at your back. Feel the waters of ancestral blessing. We are at your back. We're right here. We're right here. As we come back together, I invite into the chat anything that you might like to share, a word or a phrase of blessing, either that came to you in this meditation or that comes to you from an ancestor, a way that you know that you are blessed. And I will close us out with this blessing that whatever we receive, whether in meditation or in our waking awareness, that these not be our last blessings, for we have many, many more years to live. That these blessings that we receive from our ancestors remind us of all the wisdom that has been transmitted, all of the struggles that have been overcome, of all the strength that lives in us now. That when we become aware, when we remember the source of all of these blessings, divine and passed through the generations, that in these ways we make our ancestors' memories be a blessing.
Amen. Thank you so much, Keshira, as always, leading us so beautifully today. Speaking of ancestors, we make time and we seal our practice, as we always do, by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to engage in the practice of reciting the Kaddish, to do so, and to put the name or names of anyone who you're holding in your heart today in the chat box, either now or after we recite Kaddish. And invite those of you who are to join me in rising in body or in spirit to recite it together while everyone else stays present and extends compassion and support to those who are in mourning. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Merabah, Biyoma, Dibamotite, Biyamich Martite, Chayeho, Uchon, Uchaye, Debo, Beit Yisrael, Ba'adala, Yitkamchu, V'yamin Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevorach Olam Va'amen Va'amen. Yitbarach V'yishbach Ha'aretz Kamam V'yaseh. Yitadar V'yitaled V'yifal Shmei Tekudsha V'yifluch. La'ela Yinchod Brachata V'shirata. Yishbachata V'nechamata Ba'aminyan Ba'aman V'yimnu Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbanu Shemaya. Inu Yamshich Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Shalom B'Mamad. Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael Shekevel. Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank Adi Stein, as always, for holding our space with what seems effortlessly, and getting this safe container for us, this sanctuary for us each day. And just a note, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we are only now 7 subscribers short of making Adi a very happy person. So it's in your hands, people. I want to thank Kohenet Keshira haLev for leading us, as always, so beautifully today in practice. Really always grateful to you, Keshira, for that, and looking forward to a little bit of conversation. If you have questions or can stay on, you're welcome to do so. For those who are leading us, I want to let you know that tomorrow we'll be led in practice by someone who's new to our rotation of wonderful teachers. Rebecca Goldsmith will be joining us from Philadelphia. And on Thursday by Mira Neshama Nicolescu. And by Friday by Dr. Oded Shazifi will be leading us in practice to sit into Shabbat together. And for those who are leaving us, we hope to see you tomorrow or sometime soon. If you have a question for Keshira, please put it in the chat box and label it with question if it's a question. Okay. Well, Keshira, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate ideas of happy person, 1,000 YouTube subscribers for the Institute for True Spirituality.
Thank you, everyone. We did it.
That's what it's all about. Thank you, people. I take that just as an expression of love and appreciation for you, ID. I don't know if people actually want to be so much on YouTube, but it's a lovely thing. So I'd like to reiterate the teachings, to just kind of let it sink in a little bit, Keshira. And I heard there were a couple of things I heard which tried to bring into this today. One of which is this concept of not knowing, right, of mystery and not knowing as essential to spiritual experience. And of course, not knowing is not so comfortable. We want to know. We want the answer. How things are going to turn out, and we can't. So just want to note that. That's one thing. But I want it. Then you connected it as well with recognizing the chain of our ancestors, and I wanted to actually invite you to talk a little bit more about that, between the connection, how I understood that connection from what you said, if I got it as you intended, but I want to hear what you say. Is that in some sense it's like, yes, I don't know, but I know that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for all these people in the past who also didn't know, and kept moving forward. Like I put in the chat box, I've tried to do a little digging into my own ancestry, and I don't even know the stories about how my ancestors came here. In my case, it was a blessing that they did. Not the case for everybody, for sure, as we know. And I'm grateful for that person who had no way of knowing how this was going to turn out, right? I'm here, and that will be true. So I just wanted to invite you to talk a little bit about that. What's the connection between the not knowing and the ancestor?
It would be easy to say they're not connected, and it would be easy to say they are entirely connected. It's easy to forget in this day and age that perhaps the default is a not knowing when it comes to cognitive understanding or intellectual understanding of things. We have become so predisposed, especially in Western culture, to having all the information at our fingertips, of being able to look something up. Nobody really wonders anymore. I remember in college, we used to sit around and try to remember who was that actor in that show, and we would piece it together. Now, before anybody has a chance to wonder, someone has looked it up. Right? So firstly, there is a humility in realizing that for most of history, and also in our traditional mythology, that information was not readily available. So that's number one. I think the second is that the emphasis on having information or having mastery has precluded us from deep connection to our body knowing, from our earth wisdom as sources of knowing. And I'll postulate that our ancestors had a lot of body knowing and earth-based knowing. They survived in wilderness and moving from place to place, sometimes in haste, in weather patterns, in famine, with uncertainty, with all sorts of things that we take for granted today that we don't necessarily have to worry about. So I think for me, the connection is twofold. One is to just remember my place and be humbled by all the information that I have access to, and even with that, can't possibly know. And the second is a deep knowing of what I'm made of. I am made of and imbued with DNA and DNA blueprint of struggle and survival and blessing and ritual and joy and earth connection and song, and so much more. That is an ancestral gift. Perhaps even ancestral gifts that were purposefully not taught to me in my lifetime.
It's really great. Thank you for that. Um, Heads up, I would like to actually wanted to give you an opportunity because a lot of people may not be familiar with the the land acknowledgement practice that you began with, which seems to me to be related to what you were just talking about. So I would like to have a couple of minutes at least to come back to that. There is a question from Laura Zinker, always great questions from Laura about, I think you suggested considering divinity as perhaps containing uncertainty, that the uncertainty itself is divine. Could you speak more about this? And it just, struck me that in terms of this being, this meditation, which of course can be done in a secular context, but what makes it a spiritual, and I think that's exactly what makes it a spiritual practice, is that it's about cultivating a stance of being curious, of not knowing into knowing, right? Um, starting with not knowing and engage and setting aside what we think we know and being an open, as you beautifully described. So, do you want to add more to what you said? You offered two options. One was that the end. I think you said the not knowing itself is the divine, right? Is the mystery, but then you said something before that, which I'm
So
losing.
that if the mystery is always present and we understand the divine to be mysterious or a mystery, that even
Mhm.
amidst uncertainty,
Right.
divine is there. And to me, part of the spiritual practice is in holding paradox, that all at once, the divine is certain, always there, omnipresent, all knowing, all powerful. And at the same time, we could understand God to be in the constant, ever unfolding.
Hmm.
In Kohenet, we offer a prayer sometimes, which was written by Octavia Butler. And her words are, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So perhaps the response to Lara's beautiful question is that it's really the corollary, that the divine is the uncertainty is divine, the divine is the uncertainty, and also that the certainty is held by and within the divine.
Mm. So it's occurred to me that it's a nice look ahead also to next week's, to the beginning of Shemot, right? And at the burning bush, where God introduces God's self to Moshe as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, right? I will be what I will be. Um, you want to know my name? My name is becoming. My name is change.
Amen. It's particularly poignant also as we move toward the solstice. I've been thinking lately how just when it seems like we've seen it all in this pandemic, something else happens and we think, now what? What's next?
Mm-hmm.
That this time has been marked by uncertainty, and yet the solstice will come faithfully. The sun will return again, the seasons will move, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, climate change and climate chaos might make it seem different, but that there is, at least now, something we can rely on in the wisdom of the earth.
Mm-hmm. So maybe this is a good opportunity. Can you say a little bit about the land acknowledgement and the role that plays as in practice?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, hmm. Well, I'll say just succinctly that it is incumbent upon us to acknowledge what has come before us. We do this all the time in Jewish tradition, right? We acknowledge ancestors in our Amidah, in our Mourner's Kaddish, um, and yet most of us live on land that doesn't belong to us. There's a whole drash to be given on what it even means for land to belong to anyone. But to remember that the ground that our homes are on, the ground that we walk on in our parks, was built by and is made of primarily indigenous people who came before us. So the spiritual practice of acknowledging and naming is one way in which we keep their memories alive, in which we offer reverence. And of course, it's only a first step, paying land taxes, paying reparations taxes, contributing to indigenous funds in order to bring back whether it's seeds of wild corn and food that is indigenous to this land, or to support the livelihood and bring equity for indigenous people. It's an important practice, I believe.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I want to bring in this, not a question, a story from Judith that I want to read, and then maybe invite you, Keshira, if you would take us out with the chant again, maybe the chant that you began with, and remind us whose it is. So Judith wrote, not a question, story. I usually meditate in a room in my birth family house. My maternal grandmother and great grandmothers looked down from the walls from their oval wood frames. I thought a lot about my grandmother through COVID, her journey across Northern Europe with my 8-year-old aunt to escape the pogroms and get to America. Thank you for sharing that, Judith. So beautiful. And there's a question from Anna about the poet and the poem. I think the Octavia Butler, right? Yeah.
Indeed, Parable of the Sower. Yes, thank you, the person who wrote it in the chat. Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay. Sure, take us out.
Absolutely. And I'm going to encourage you to click on this link, because I can't do justice to this gorgeous song by Kohenet Sarah Salem. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here. Lean back, we are at your back. Feel the waters of ancestral blessing. We are at your back. We're right here. We're right here. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. Lean back, they say. We're right here. We're right here.
Thank you so much, Keshira. Putting in the chat box as well to Kesha Pittsburgh for those of you who would like to have other opportunities for learning and practice with Keshira. Thank you, Kohenet Keshira haLev Fife, for leading us so beautifully as always. And thanks to all of you for being present today. And want to just salute your devotion to your practice and showing up day by day. And hope to see you tomorrow for practice with Rebecca Goldsmith. Thanks, Keshira. And thank you, Adi, so much. And thanks all of you for being here. Be well, everyone.